You're listening to Menopause Natural Solutions, episode 73, Cannonball into Menopause with Amy Schmidt. Welcome to Menopause Natural Solutions, your podcast for all things perimenopause, menopause and beyond. Stay tuned as your host, naturopath Jennifer Harrington, explains how to use natural therapies to find your ultimate health and happiness during your transition. And today's special guest is Amy Schmidt. Amy's mission is to empower and encourage women 40 plus to go all in and not lose their identity or become invisible. She wants to embolden women to push their fears aside and create the life they envision for themselves going forward into midlife and beyond. Amy is also a TEDx presenter, author, podcaster, and founder of Fearlessly Facing 50. Amy, I am so happy that you could join me today.
Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here. Thank you so much. And you said fearlessly facing 50 with total ease. It just sometimes that's a lot of F's to say. Sometimes it's tricky. I know. Thank you.
I had to practice that one.
Exactly. Me too.
So, Amy, what led you to starting Fearlessly Facing 50?
Such a great question. I think for so many women, this phase of life is a challenge, I think. I can remember when I was sitting in my office just before I was turning 50, about the year before, and my kids are grown now. My youngest, I still have one at home, he's 17, but the other two are grown. And I was sitting in my house by myself and gone through a lot of things that we as midlife women go through. Lost my parents, some health changes, some other things, and I've moved a variety of times around the world. And I was sitting there in an empty house and thought, you know what, there's something more there for me to do and to learn and to provide and to serve. And so I decided just to go all in and kind of use my experiences I've had in the past and use those to kind of propel me forward, use those accomplishments and start a podcast. And I wrote a book, and it's all about the challenges we face at midlife and really opening that narrative and that dialogue around it.
Why do you think midlife is so challenging for women?
Oh, it's such a great question. I think it's challenging. I find with the discussions I have in my own personal journey that, we tend to kind of lose our identity at times. You're this mom, possibly, and a sister, a daughter, a wife, one of those things or all of those things. And at certain periods in your journey, things change and you're needed differently. In my, example, I had lost my parents. My kids were older, so they were needing me differently. You kind of all of a sudden have this time. And it's kind of how you create, how you want to use that time. And I think that's why women struggle at midlife, is because they feel as though they've gotten outdated, or they've lost their identity and they're just a mom or just a wife. And so I want to go beyond that and reach beyond that and empower women to think bigger and realize that, we're living longer and there's so much more we can do.
I often find women don't recognize themselves anymore. They look in the mirror and they're like, who is this person? How did I get here?
I know. I think it's true. And, we are our worst critics, right? As women, we really are. In my book, I published a study that was out several years ago, but it was a university here in the United States that surveyed a group of women between 45 and 50. And they looked in the mirror and immediately felt despair and sadness because they didn't see what they thought they would see. They thought they would see this 20-year-old, but yet they're seeing the real vision of themselves, the storylines and the aging, all that transpires. And it's such a time to celebrate. But at times we kind of just look in the rearview mirror and think, where did those years go? And what happened? And where did I go? You question that. Who am I and where am I? Are those questions that come up a lot for women.
I agree. Definitely.
Yeah.
So you mentioned your book and
Yes.
Cannonball, You're Never Too Old and It's Never Too Late.
Exactly.
So what are some of the things you're looking forward to in
Mm.
this next stage of your life?
Oh, thanks for asking that. I think to when my mom turned 50, I don't know if you remember when your mom turned 50, but I do. And I thought at that time, wow, that's old. Like, I can't imagine my mom was turning 50, and here I am in my 50s now. I'm looking so forward to this next decade. I think because I have a new confidence I found within myself. I'm willing to try things that I never was going to try before. I'm embracing lifetime learning, which I think is so important for women to do,
Definitely.
to kind of stretch beyond that comfort zone and say, you know what, I'm going to try this. We have so many resources available. I look at what we're doing today and talking, clear around the world and connecting. And we share this same vision around, empowering women. And I just think there's so much we can do at this phase of life. For myself, I just look forward to the collaborations like this, learning from others and making new friends, challenging yourself.
There's a couple of books around at the
Mm,
moment, Lost Connections,
yes.
and there was another one I heard about yesterday where they were talking about friendships and your
Mm,
social groups actually extend your life. So not just the
mm.
quality of life, but the quantity of your life as well.
Really? Oh,
Yeah,
I love that.
I'm
I
I'm
love
going to
that.
find the name of the book and I'll put it in the show notes,
Yeah, that would be
because she was
fantastic.
actually looking at research that was
Wow.
saying that loneliness
Yeah. Right.
shortens your life,
Right. And isn't
and
there that yeah,
the quality of your connections as well.
right. And I think that's a challenge for us at this age because, you kind of, if your kids are grown, you're not in the line at the primary school anymore, picking up your child, or, you don't have those connections, and women thrive on those connections and those conversations. I talk a lot about friends just because of my own experience. I really wouldn't be where I am today without my friends. The ones that really are your anchors in your life that you look to for support on good days and not so good days. And I have to read that, because if there's research around that too, around extending your life, how fantastic is that? Because women need friendships, they really do. And I think we also have to accept that they evolve over time.
Mm.
Some disintegrate. Some friends that we had 10 years ago just are adding value differently to our life, and maybe it's sometimes a challenge for women to walk away from challenging friendships, and yet you never know what's going to bloom on the other side. You never know who you're going to meet along your journey.
Yeah, I do encourage women to increase their social circle as well at
Hmm.
this time, because you really are the sum of the five people that you hang around with. And
Yes.
if you're looking at women, if you're looking at those five people around you and they're not supporting you, they're not encouraging you, they're not motivating you, you don't
Right.
necessarily need to leave them behind, but it can be,
Right.
can you find other people, men or women,
Exactly.
that are
Yes.
doing things you want to do and that could
Right.
potentially support you in trying something else. So it could be joining a walking group because you want to get
Right.
active and no one in your
Yes.
life is currently active. So at least then you
Right.
have some support in trying something new or doing something new.
Exactly. I so agree with that. I had a woman recently, oh, this was months ago, but she had written in and she had kind of reached out about the fact that she felt like her friendships were changing and she was feeling lonely. She was an empty nester. And there was a new neighbor that moved in down the street. But she said, I'm not going to have anything in common with that neighbor. They're in their 30s. They're so much younger. They're not going to have anything in common with me. But she went outside her comfort zone and walked down there and took some donuts or something, some bakery, and knocked on the door. And sure enough, the woman that answered is a young new mom that has one little toddler running around and another one, that she's holding. And they've have this wonderful friendship now. They didn't realize that they really needed each other in their lives. So you're so right when you say, we have to be open to finding new friends.
I can relate to that story because
Yeah.
I used to have a friend of mine. She's still a very dear friend. She's 40 years older than me. And she would
Wow.
come over so I could have some adult stimulation when I had my newborn baby,
I
and would
love it.
just help me with things and chat. And even today I can pick up the phone and it's not like a hi, how you doing? It's a 2 hour phone
Is it
conversation
really? Oh, I
because
love
we
that.
have similar interests. So it doesn't matter
Right.
what age the person it is, or
Exactly.
what sex or what culture or what country they're from. It's whether you actually have similar interests.
Right. So true. So true.
So, Amy, what would be your top couple of tips for a woman wanting to reinvent themselves at this stage?
Oh, I love that question. One thing I talk about a lot is the power of self-reflection, and I call it creating your highlight reel. I think there's so much power in that. And that is actually for women that are feeling a little bit stuck. I use that saying of looking at a map and not quite knowing which way to go. To actually take time, put pen to paper, and sit down and think about all those accomplishments that have taken place in your life, those experiences you've had, and the stories, the things that you've learned, the mistakes that you've made, and all of that knowledge that you've acquired over the years, and jot it down. And all of a sudden you look at that and you get this picture of all of these gifts and accomplishments that you have that can propel you forward. You can use those experiences. Maybe you managed a budget for a committee, for a school project years ago, but you kind of forget about it because as women, we have to multitask and reinvent. So we go on from one thing to the other. But when you actually take some time and really focus on what you've accomplished, there's so much there. And that's such a gift that those experiences can propel you forward. I really think there's power in that. And that's actually taking time and self-reflecting. I also think another thing that I really want women to do, especially, is what is their value? How do they know themselves from a value perspective? And that's a challenging thing. And where do you add value? So I challenge women to go to their anchors in their lives, their good friends or a good colleague that's known you forever, and ask them the question, why did you choose me as your friend? How am I adding value to your life? And of course there's an awkwardness there, and they may say, oh, Amy, yeah, I've been friends with you for years, of course you know. But then dig a little bit deeper, because that's really on that other side of that awkwardness is where the magic is when all of a sudden it kind of peels back all these layers. You're being vulnerable and you're asking, why are you choosing me as your friend? And they say, because you're this. And you jot those things down. And once again, those are things that you can reflect on, and it can propel you forward in directions you've never imagined.
Hmm. I recommend women look at dream lists or
Oh,
vision
yeah.
boards or
Yes.
bucket lists and things like that. Do you
Right.
do that with your women?
Yes. I mean, I love vision boards. And I'm such a visual person. I love that. I do. And I think there's so much power in the mind. I had a woman on not long ago on my podcast, Angie Johnsey, who talks about just the power of the mind and how when you really create that power and you think about things through a different lens, and it really does, it propels you forward, and you have those visions of where you want to go and how to get there. And that's what you can do. It really does create magic.
And sometimes you don't actually know what you want. You just know you're stuck.
Right.
So it
Yes.
can help to actually go, okay, well, let's think about this. Let's sit down and go, what
Exactly.
is it that I want from the second half of my life? Is it
Yeah.
better health? Is it more
Right.
travels? Is it better connections? Is it to learn something new? Like you spoke about continued education. I
Yes.
love continued education. It's something I need
Yeah.
to do for my career, but it's something
Right.
I want to do. I generally do anywhere
Right.
between 2 to 4 times more than what I have to do because I genuinely
Exactly.
love it. Um,
Exactly. And it's very
so
empowering to learn something new. I think about even the technology part of it. For me, when I launched the podcast, I was nervous about that because I'm not overly tech savvy. Social media intimidates me still a little bit to this day. But you learn that, and all of a sudden you have this new sense of, wow, I did that. It's really a great thing. It really
mm.
is.
We're in a similar journey, just with the book and the podcasts, both
Yes.
around similar kind of points. And I can still remember how nerve-wracking the first
Mm.
podcast was. And
Oh
now
my
I'm
goodness.
about a year and a half in. It certainly it gets easier and the
It
nerves
does.
go and the joy comes. So
Yeah,
with
it's true.
starting anything new, you've just got to do it. You've got to find the confidence, the
You do.
self-belief, and the
You do.
self-worth
And
to
you also, yeah, and you have to give yourself permission to kind of forgive yourself if you make mistakes. And, like I mentioned to you at the beginning, I forgot to push record. And before we started this podcast, you said, oh, I got to remember to push record. A simple thing like that, I forgot on my first episode. And then I had that immediate feeling, like we do so often, of self-doubt, like, oh, what is she trying to do here? How is she going to manage this podcast and empower all these women when she can't even remember to push record? But you do have to give yourself permission to forgive from those mistakes, because it takes courage to be confident, and you learn from all of those things.
And it gives you a funny story to laugh about later.
Yes, exactly. My husband laughs about it all the time. He's like, remember when mom forgot to put that, forgot to push record, or remember? Yeah. It's usually a pretty funny story around here.
Yep. Yes. Well, Amy, you've mentioned your podcast and the
Yeah,
book. I know that you also do one-on-one mentoring. Do you
I
want to tell
do.
the listeners a little bit about that?
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really excited about it. I worked with a great group that put together a lot of research around mentorship for me to launch this program, and it's brand new. I've always been a mentor, but this is kind of a mentorship program that really is custom tailored to midlife women. And I feel the value of mentors is so important. And that's really just to guide you along your journey and maybe make things look a little bit more clear and a little bit more clarity and focus around where you want to go. And we usually meet about, I don't know, between 4 and 6 times. And then we kind of have a plan of where you want to go and where you're looking to go forward. And that can be as simple as, I had a woman that I mentored because she really was stuck and feeling quite lonely and, just didn't quite know what she wanted to do. And we started with the power of these 6 words of get up, get dressed, and get going. And we talked about that for a while. And all of a sudden, she started to get more motivation. And so the power of having a mentor and somebody kind of cheering you on and listening and has been through that same journey, that's really what the focus of my program is.
Sounds like a friend on steroids.
It is. It's a
Someone
friend
who's
on steroids.
got your back and
Yeah,
is on your side, on your team, supporting you and cheering you
right.
on from the sidelines.
Yes, exactly. Exactly. I'm really excited about it. It's been great. The women that I've had in the program, they feel that the power of mentors is so important. And it is like a best friend too. I mean, it really is, because you become vulnerable. I have work created for them that I really ask them questions about where they want to go, and they gain more clarity. And that's what's so important.
Yeah. A lot of women genuinely are lost. And to
Yes.
have somebody point them in the right direction, but
Right.
then hold their hand
You're right.
is so nurturing and so
Yeah.
lovely. I can
Yeah.
I can assume that there's a win-win for both
Yes.
of you, everyone involved in that situation.
You're right. There really is, because I feel like I learned so much from those women as well. Just like with podcasting, every time I get done with an episode, I just sit back and you're just so filled with gratitude because of what you've learned from that person. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah. Women empowering women.
Yes. Yes. And the collaboration part is something that I don't think really clicks with women until they're older. I think when we're younger, we're more competitive. And, whether it's in a career or whatever you're doing, you're trying to get there the fastest or make the most money or do that. And then all of a sudden that shifts and you realize the value in collaborating and learning from each other, because everybody has a different perspective or opinion or story. And that's what's so important.
But also, you mentioned values before. Your values change as you go through
Yeah.
different stages of your life. And I
Yes.
think having that period of time in the middle where you're busy looking after everyone else, and then
Right.
you realize, actually, I need self-care, and actually, so does
Yes.
everyone else around me needs me
Right.
to lighten up
Yeah.
and show up differently in the world.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. That's so true. Self-care is such an important part of a woman's journey, and such a challenge for so many. You want to treat yourself as the guest of honor is what I always say. And that's so challenging for us because we're so used to taking care of everybody else. But that's a mindset shift that I think so many women in this space are talking about, that it's really starting to spread a little bit like confetti. People are starting to realize that, hey, I've got to take care of myself, put my oxygen mask on first, and then take care of everyone else.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Well, Amy, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat
Oh,
with
thank
you
you.
today. And so tell the listeners how they can find you.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I have a website, which is www.fearlesslyfacing50.com. 50 is spelled out. And you know what? I love people to email me. I get so many emails. I do give myself this self-care boundary of returning emails within 48 hours instead of 24, but that's Amy, AMY, at fearlesslyfacing50.com. I've got a nice group on Facebook, as well as a Facebook page. You can find me, just search Fearlessly Facing 50. And Instagram, I'm actually my author name, amy.k.schmidt. So if you link that to the episode notes, everybody can find me. But I really love to engage with my community. I feel like there's a trust that we develop over time. And, you're trusting your community is trusting you in the messages that you're bringing. So I love to engage with my listeners and my followers. So I appreciate anybody, reaching out around the world. It's fantastic.
And also, it could even be dipping your toe in the water with the book, or
yes,
cannonballing off the end.
or cannonballing, uncomfortable, and yes, but you got to make that impressive splash. I do book clubs all over the world. So I actually had one in Australia, a group out of Sydney, about 12 women, about 4 weeks ago, and it was fabulous. They've read the book. You can order it on Amazon.au. You can order it on anywhere, New Zealand, Australia, Europe, anywhere. So it's kind of fun to have those experiences. And we talk about the book, but the most important part of the book for people that are reading it are the ends of the chapters. I share my vulnerabilities, and there's a lot of commonalities with women, but at the end of each chapter, I share these reflections where you can actually apply these things to your life and go back. And I still go back to the book and say, well, I think I'm going to do that a little differently now at this phase. So I love the reflections part. So I encourage anybody that has a book club, please reach out and we can, do something over Zoom. It's pretty fun.
Fabulous.
Pretty fun. Yeah.
Well, thank you for your time. And ladies, thank you for your time. I look forward to talking to you again next week. Bye for now. Thank you for listening to Menopause Natural Solutions. This podcast contains general information about menopause. It is provided as a guide, and it is not intended to replace medical advice. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. If you have enjoyed today's episode, please leave a rating and review.